Welcome back, guys, to the Torch of Liberty. This is our second episode, and we got a little bit more to bring to the table. In our last video, we covered common versus commercial law and the differences, and basically how we're going to go back to common law. And we'll get in future videos into steps we'll take, and we'll show you. At times, it might be more like vlogging or whatever, not always just caught in this room behind the camera. But for now, we felt like it would be a good step to take to talk more about government bureaucracy and their jurisdiction in the United States. Because in this last video, I remember it was like a little side point that I was talking about because we were covering the right to travel versus a driving privilege and all that. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely suggest go watch that first. A lot of these videos will be in somewhat chronological order. And then on like a little side note offshoot, I was bringing up like government overreach, and then I just like spaced and brought up 2001, and I didn't ever say the Patriot Act. I went back when we were editing and watching it, and I thought to myself, like, that was so bad of me to not even say Patriot Act or bring up how they started spying on us and everything with that. But also, since I'm so young, it doesn't really make sense for me to even bring that up. And on this channel, we're going to definitely be bringing it to you, like how government is affecting people across this entire nation. So something that I felt was more ideal and relevant. Just after I listened to it, I was the next day at work just thinking like, oh, I can't believe I didn't think about COVID. The way the government operated under COVID, I mean, I know different states did different things, but the mask mandates, the business regulation, where there was so much to that, whether they required workers to be vaccinated. I was actually working at a security job, and for one of the locations I worked, they said that you had to be vaccinated to work there and have a Vax card. I went to Seattle to see a football game, and they were requiring vaccine cards to enter after I'd paid for my ticket. So much more into all that, and this show is not just going to be the news, so I don't need to go on more, but I'm sure you know of small businesses that shut down due to government overreach into our lives. And that's why today we're talking about bureaucracy and jurisdiction, to speak on what they actually have the right to do. And that's the jurisdiction of the government, and that's what he'll get into after a bit. But I just felt like it would be good to speak on the bureaucracy of it, because in an ideal world, if we were just in a perfect government, the way it was established and written and intended, it wouldn't be too hard to resolve any problems with government bureaucracy. But when you have so many different departments doing so many different things, it does a lot of things, does a lot of problematic things in our nation, such as you'll have government bureaus that run land management, business bureaus, the Better Business Bureau, all these other things, like all these different organizations and departments doing different things. So when the CDC or WHO recommends that you stay 6 feet apart and recommends their vaccines that they come out with, it affects all business and like most things you can think of, and that's just for health. But then you come to like construction jobs and like building, you have to have, there's so many different building codes for, and most of that's for safety, but still the fact that you would have to pay the government and have to go through audits and all this different stuff. This is where it's a very big problem to have the government be so large as to, it just takes one person in a bad mood to ruin someone's life. And with that, there's a lot to be said on it. But for the most part, what you should realize is that it's not great. And there's a lot of people in these government bureaus that are not great people. They make way more money than a lot of people, and they don't do anything but take and regulate. And like I said, if you find one in a bad mood, your life's over. It's going to ruin your life if you're trying to open a restaurant yourself, all these other things. So I just felt that that was something that should be brought up as we talk about moving towards common law and the steps we're going to be taking with all that, just to present the fact that when government's so big and tries to do so many different things, that it is a huge problem. I mean, I'm sure that you can find some good people in those bureaus and in these different departments of government, but more often than not, and overall, it's not a good thing. And I actually have right here the Black's Law definition of bureaucracy, just so anyone out there who has never heard the term or doesn't fully understand what it means, I'll pull it up for you real quick. All right, so right here, bureaucracy, a system in which the business of government is carried on in departments, each under the control of a chief, in contradistinction from a system in which the officers of government have a coordinate authority. So that's like WHO, CDC, FBI, literally the Federal Bureau of Investigation, CIA, so many more things, the Bureau of Land Management, so many different things that from top down assess and interfere. I mean, I know they say they regulate these things, but it's literally interference, and not great at that. I'm sure people online would beg to differ, and I'm sure some people might comment that they do good things. Oh, my dad works for the Bureau of Land Management and whatnot. But overall, just like as you sit back and think about it, I'm not sure what the amount of people who work in the federal government is, but a lot of that's going to come from these bureaus. And the key point with it all is just that when something like COVID happens and you have the WHO and CDC recommending these things, there's the aspect of incompetence and an aspect of, what's the word for it? Incompetence or malice. So whether they're dumb and they don't know that the COVID vaccines, which technically aren't vaccines, whether or not they like think they would do anything or whatnot, but they recommend them, that would be incompetence. And then you got false promises and you got required to get them, and you would be fired if you didn't and whatnot. And that's overall just a general overreach to be requiring someone to get a vaccine to work or to go into a grocery store or whatnot. Or it's malice, where they just want money and they don't care about you. So
treason.
Yeah. Yeah. At times, definitely. So whether it's incompetence or malice, either way, it's just not okay. And that's why I bring up government bureaucracy, because then people can obfuscate responsibility and be like, oh, that was Anthony Fauci at the CDC or WHO or wherever, NIH, whatever. He recommended masks, and then he didn't recommend masks, then he did again or whatever at the beginning, and then recommended the shots, and then all this stuff where it's like, and they didn't recognize natural immunity. I mean, I'm not trying to get too specific into COVID, but that's just off the top of my head quite a few examples of where they were wrong, whether they knew it or not. I do think there was, like, it came out that there was emails that he did know or something. I didn't look into it too much just because it's just right there on my plate. Like, I'm not sitting there watching CNN and like lost and unaware of it. So just with that, you gotta, one of the first things about holding our government responsible and teaching them their errors and making sure that they don't do them again is understanding what they are and who they are. And that's, a lot of them come from these bureaucracies. And now at this point, we can get into some jurisdiction to speak on what they can rightfully do, and when they don't do that, that's against all lawful interaction. All right, and for that one, I'll pass it over to my boy Quade.
So jurisdiction, this is what we're going to be getting into now, is the difference between the law of the land, law of the water, and law of the air. So when you go into a courtroom, they want you to get a lawyer to represent you, which is something that you totally cannot indulge in because they're trying to get you in a trap. See, we're all free, sovereign souls here having a human experience, but in that courtroom, they look at you as a dead entity. So when they call your name up and you go up to that door, you open it up the floodgates into their little maritime law that they got set up, which is the law of the water. You want to go by the law of the land and the law of the air. It goes really deep, so I'm not going to get into all of it, but we'll definitely target the law of the water and the law of the land. It's literally the difference between common and commercial law, like we were just talking about the episode before this. So let me hit the rewind button. When you go into that courtroom and you get a so-called lawyer to represent you, what you're doing is you're allowing the people in our government to take control over you jurisdiction-wise. So basically, if you don't represent yourself, you're a dead entity, and now that person, that lawyer, who is a part of the Bar Association, the British Accreditation Registry, he's going to make sure that you either get jail time or a fine. And that's a guarantee because they work for those folks that are in there. That prosecutor and that judge in there are trying to get money off of you. They profit off of you going to jail. They profit off of you fines. So jurisdiction is extremely important. When you go into a courtroom, you have to represent yourself. That's how you represent your soul, human self, and not as a dead entity.
Oh, and real quick, I was just wanting to say, for any of you who are doubting it or whatnot, we will bring evidence and like notes about it, just to display that we're not just making it up off the top and just ranting about it without understanding it. Like he was saying, the British Accreditation Registry had to have a treaty with the government, I believe it was. And the funny thing is that in law, you make a treaty with a foreign entity. So it's already displaying that they are not, and that ties into jurisdiction, where it's like they are a foreign entity to the United States. So as you go into the courts, like here in the United States, they're actors of a foreign entity. So I just wanted to bring that up so you can maybe start to believe us, because it gets deep real quick, and we hope you just don't tune out and say whatever, because this is life-changing material. Trust me, this isn't just a news show.
And also, in the first episode, when I mentioned that there's two different types of constitutions, because since the prosecutors, the judges, they're all working for the British Accreditation Registry, they don't operate under the Constitution for the United States. They operate with the Constitution of the United States. Huge difference. That means they don't work for you if they took an oath of office to the Constitution for the United States, which means those are the laws that they put for United States citizens. That's the jurisdiction they try to wrap you into. One thing that you do when you go into these courts is you make sure that they took an oath of office to the Constitution for the United States, not of.
Oh, and with that too, I'll definitely have to find the clip, or notes and evidence for y'all. But I heard that they take a higher oath to the bar itself when they pass the test and get inaugurated or enlisted or whatever, however you want to call it. But that they take a higher oath dedicated to that registry, which overrides their dedication to uphold the Constitution.
And I'm telling you, 99.9% of these folks, they don't take the correct oath of office. They all work for the British Crown. It's treason from the get go. So, this is why it's super important to know the difference between a maritime law, commercial law, and natural law, common law, or the law of the land. When you go into these situations, you have to know what you're talking about. You actually have to find yourself and find these laws, natural laws, so you can go up against these crooks that are in those positions of power that are trying to undermine you. So when you go up into a courtroom, when you represent yourself, you're on a special appearance, you're a free human sovereign soul having a human experience. You're not the dead entity because they give you what they call a straw man. It's all your all caps name that's on your social security card. Your name is not all caps. You got lowercase, your first name, or uppercase on the first letter of your first name, lowercase for the rest. Same with your middle, same with your last name. That is your living name, basically. When they ask you to come up in the court, they don't ask you to come up in that courtroom. They're asking the dead entity. But before we even get to that position, they already were relying on you to get a lawyer to represent you rather than representing yourself. So, getting into this difference between these jurisdictions, one of them is trying to get you in jail. The other one is going to set you free, basically. Even if the government or the people in those positions want to put you in there for contempt, whatever. Like I said before in the episode previous to this, common law. If you haven't damaged any property, you haven't committed any human rights violations, did any bodily harm to anyone, they can't touch you. There are specific statutes in their code where they can't go against you or prosecute you for anything if you didn't commit those common law violations. There's Section 18, 241, and 242, which is the color of law, and they're taking away your human rights under the color of law. And those two violations on their side, which is their commercial law, if they violate that, you can fine them with whatever you want. $10,000 per minute, doesn't matter. They violate your human rights, they can't prosecute you.
And with that, I think for those code violations, it was like you could fine them for 10,000, and then it jumps up to like 25, and then 75 or 100, something like that. And then with that too, I was gonna say that as you walk into a courtroom and are assessing these jurisdictions, there's as the judge sees you as you walk in, he's assessing the land or the law of the air, which is trust law. And we'll get deeper into these in other videos because they're topics that need their own videos to be discussed, and we'll have multiple files up for you so you can pause it, write down whatever, or at least believe us at least. But the first thing he assesses as you walk in is he assesses you in trust law. And then after that, he takes off that formality review and goes to the law of the land, common law. And that has to do with titles. So if you have your superior titles, your certificate of live birth, and all these other things, we'll get into it in other videos, I promise. But then that's why he was saying you got to represent yourself, because that's the first thing. Because if you aren't representing yourself, you're already giving up your high ground, your status and standing in these jurisdictions. But if you claim that, which is your birthright, sorry to use a term that is a little bit overused, I guess. But if you take hold of that status and standing, you will override their jurisdiction. So the first thing for most people, I would say, focus on status, because that's something that was blindly robbed of you. Then you have to learn how to stand, and that's where the standing comes in. The three domains of land, air, water, really easy to remember. And I don't think we said that spells out law, LAW, land, air, water. But at first is the air is over the land, which is above the water. So most important is law of the air, trust law. And we'll get way into it in other videos, I promise. I'm just going to not do all that, or else this video would be way too long. But then land, common law, has to do with titles, superior titles, and then water is where they want to get you. But that's basically what we're saying. We're wading out of the water and gonna live on land because we ain't about that water life.
Right. As we're just scratching the surface right here, so we're going to get into Black's Law, because other definitions we need to get into is what you need to know when you do step into those courtrooms, because these judges and these prosecutors, they think of you as a person. Now go ahead and flip it to the Black's Law dictionary so we can show the people what a person actually means in the Black's Law dictionary, because this is what the judges and the prosecutors think of you when you step into this room. Person, a man considered according to the rank he holds in society, with all the right to which the place he holds entitles him, and the duties which it imposes. Includes women as well as men. Term may include artificial beings as a corporation. So the judge and the prosecutor and the people that are in those positions, they look at you as a corporation. That's how they get you into the law of the water, because they can't speak to a living human soul. They got to speak to a corporation or a dead entity. So you're not a person, you're a human being. You're a soul here having a human experience. So that's something that you definitely need to be aware of once you start getting into the jurisdiction of things, because words really matter, and they have really just jumbled our vocabulary, and for us to say things that we're not, and to put us in situations to where we're under a jurisdiction that is a foreign jurisdiction and we are not aware of.
And also with that ties right back into our last episode where we brought up the 14th Amendment and emphasized citizen so much, because just like the term person, citizen is essentially the same. If anything, call yourself a civilian, but to them, if you're ever in court and stuff and talking to government, consider yourself a living human soul. Because these terms, whereas you might think it's benign and not anything problematic, it has dire consequences when you're speaking with government. And with that, we're not sitting here saying all judges are, what's the word I used before? Not malice. They're not malicious. They're not sitting there and understanding this. For the most part, no one understands all this. It's just we happen to stumble upon a group of great people, and now we feel the need to make our voice heard as well, because potentially somebody who hears us speak will then understand it as well. So, yeah, it ties back into the last video with the term citizen, but person is the same. And then as we were talking about land, air, water, the jurisdictions, we have the definition of ship, because there's something revealing in the definition of that as well, because a lot of it, they view you as a corporation and a vessel, and treat you as such. So person, the root of purser, is the person who on the ship pays for things. When you get into port and they're the one required to pay and sign the checks. A lot of this we'll get into later, but as you, because it ties back into banking and payments and all this stuff, it gets real deep.
Ties into birth too. With
your
birth certificate.
Yeah, starting with your birth certificate, it's a bond tied to banking. There's government issued bonds.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. There'll definitely be another video on that. But and a lot of it, they treat the you as a corporation and as a ship, as a vessel, because I'll pull up that definition right now.
And you're probably wondering, so why do they want you as a dead entity or a corporation? Well, there's things that you should know that they don't end up telling you when you're born, and we'll definitely get into that on later videos because we don't want to make this a 10-hour long video. But yeah, uh, they made you a dead entity on birth, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So ship, a vessel of any kind employed in navigation. In a more restricted and more technical sense, a three-masted vessel navigated with sails. But just because this all does tie back into how ships were used internationally, that's how they treat us as human beings. And it gets very deep, and we will take our time in explaining all this. But we, in this video, wanted to bring up the bureaucracy of government to just like display and show that it's not just the executive, legislator, and judicial. There are all these departments of people whose sole job it is to attend to government-related things. And I forget the number off the top of my head, but there's a very limited number of essential services that we contract with the government for, and anything outside of that is
19.
yeah, 19 or something. Like, we could bring it up, and I probably should have prepped it for this one just because we're talking about jurisdiction and bureaucracy. But there is a limited number of services. I wish I would have pulled it up and stuff. But, I mean, it's not that hard to find. And it says after that, 19 essential services and no more. That's the key point of it, where, like, and just like the last two amendments in the Bill of Rights saying that if we don't declare you have that honor as a government, or like the way they set it up, if they don't have permission to do something, that they are restricted from doing it, and it shall be decided by the states. So this is, I guess, was stepped over and overreached by government bureaus to just make themselves bigger and bigger and bigger. We're literally, that they have the biggest budget out of any government ever in the world.
Who voted for the FBI to be put in place? Who voted for the CDC to be put in place? The WHO, the list goes on and on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we just wanted to bring that up, the bureaucracy, as well as the jurisdiction of government in general, because these are important aspects, along with common and commercial law, for when we get into specific videos of, say you want to exercise your right to travel, and then a police officer writes you a ticket, and now you're about to show up to your court date. What are the things you should say, and what are the court cases you should show to the judge? Because, like, I literally have them in my car, like I said in the past video, and in the previous video, that there are Supreme Court cases in which they uphold the right to travel. So it's stuff like that that we'll get more specifically into, but we just wanted to take this time to make this video to talk on jurisdiction and bureaucracy, because those are key points in what we're operating through here. And I don't know if you got much more to say to the
This is the
people.
Torch of Liberty. Stay tuned. We got lots more to come for you guys. We have to get our heads straight, and we have to learn and unlearn what the government has for us and relearn freedom, liberty, sovereignty, and the pursuit of happiness. And together we will be able to get ourselves out of this water and actually become free human souls having a human experience without any regulations from our government. And we got to do it together, though. It's a long process. This is Torch of Liberty signing off.